Today's podcast is brought to you by Funny Bone Broth, now available at Italy and McEwen's in the TD Center. Or you can visit them at funnybonebroth.com.
In a world where it seems totally normal to listen to a podcast about the Toronto Argonauts, it's the X's and Argos podcast.
Welcome to the X's and Argos podcast. I'm Ben Grant, joined by JB, and the week of free agent madness is over. 3 more guys signed over the last 2 days, but most of the madness is over. What do you think of free agency week?
I thought it was pretty successful. I wasn't really that surprised. I didn't think that they were going to try and sign any big ticket items. It didn't make any sense to have really anybody on the team making a huge contract. It is not what this team is going to be next year. I think that this upcoming season is very much a rebuilding construction season, and so it made sense for them to, bring in a lot of new faces and a bunch of lottery tickets and see if they hit on a few.
But I'm really happy with the week. I wanted them to re-sign Darrell Walker, but it didn't really make sense at that, the kind of money that we'd be talking about. And same with Lang, like you were saying, that's not really what the plan was, because by not signing those 2 guys, you free up a ton of money. And you look at the number of talented players they brought in, it's impressive.
Yeah, I don't want to step on my own piece of writing I'm doing, but for sure, if I'm looking at the steps to creating a sustainable winner, the first step is you have to strip the whole thing down to the studs. And that's not a halfway operation. It means basically, other than the quarterback, everyone must go. And so I think largely they've done that. I think that they basically have stripped that team down from what it was last year.
And even the quarterback is now second string.
Yeah. I think that's exactly what you have to do.
And we're talking about back-to-back 4-win seasons. So those are not small adjustments. And you said this before, it's like changing the whole culture. This was a team that had done nothing but lose for 2 years. And so let's get these guys out of there and, keep the few that you think have the right attitude and have some potential. And then...
Well, it's the first step. That's something that will definitely be an area we'll talk about, is they've done that, but then how good are they at rebuilding the house? Because in truth, it is easier to tear down a house than to build a house. So I will give them credit for not pretending that they were something they're not during free agency. So I'm happy with free agency, but I think that they have brought in a lot of guys that are going to be, we'll see how manageable this group is as a team.
That's the key, because on paper, these guys look great. I think this is the most talented the Argos have been at, this point in the offseason in years. But that doesn't always translate into a winning team. You have to see how they work together. You've got almost everybody that's going to be learning new systems and new coaching staff. So, it's going to take a while. I said earlier, I think it'd be about 6 weeks or so for the Argos to kind of figure out a little bit, who they are. And hopefully it's not too late by then.
Yeah, I like who they've brought in. Another one of my big pushes is I do think it's very important for the franchise to decide on the identity of what they're looking for. And therefore, it shouldn't seem as random when they're bringing in guys, that they should be bringing in a type. I don't think they've quite decided what their type is yet. But
I like the strategy that they had of, some of the Canadian receivers they brought in. And we can talk about that a little bit later as we go through specifics. But I felt like that was certainly something they were thinking about. It was a big deal signing Breskison. He's, people have talked about him as a ratio changer. And if you're going to have a couple Canadian receivers starting, and I think there's going to be at least 2, that allows you to do a lot of interesting stuff in other positional groups.
Yeah, I think that's smart. If you're looking to discover a market inefficiency, that's potentially one that they found. If you can roll with that many Canadian receivers, that is a tremendous advantage for you as a team. So I respect the strategy.
I think the guys I was sort of the bigger names I was excited about weren't necessarily huge names, but I was so relieved when we signed Phil Blake. We needed help on the O-line desperately. And so Blake is huge. I was really happy about Dariush Bladek, especially because he can play center. I don't know what the plan is at center. We'll talk about that a little bit later when we talk about positional groups. But, he's probably going to play guard. That's where he's been most, but at least he knows how to play center. We were talking on our last podcast about how few guys we've got on the O-line, especially the interior O-line, and they address that pretty well by bringing in Bladek and bringing in Blake. So, those, weren't necessarily signings that are going to make the front page, but they're signings that I was really excited about, probably more than any other of the big names we brought in.
Yeah, I was happy with. I was actually very happy with the Lacombo signing. I personally I really enjoyed him. And
he's great. I don't know, like that backer situation though is.
If you use him properly, I think that he's, he's a thumper, obviously. But he's the kind of guy that can give your defense a definition as long as you use him in, you don't try and overuse him. You don't try and
he's got
expand beyond his
pretty clear strengths and weaknesses. And I think, they'll be aware of that. Obviously, there's a lot of film on him. And, being a Canadian, that's massive. If he can start at Sam, let's say, that, again, changes up what you can do at other positions. And I don't think there's going to be a ton of starting Canadians on the defensive side. I think mostly between the O-line and the few receivers we've got, it's going to be on the offensive side of the ball where you see those Canadian starters. But the more you have starting, the better. And there's no reason why you can't start 8, 9, 10 Canadians if that's where your talent is. So I think that's pretty exciting. Lacombo was a huge pickup.
Yeah, I think he potentially is an absolute monster special teamer too.
And what about Chris Aki brought in as well? Another Canadian that, and I have him penciled in right now sort of as our cover backer. I don't know in this system if he's going to be called Sam or Will. They, have sometimes flip-flop it a little bit in the CFL. But, the cover backer spot for Aki, that's a perfect role for him. He's been playing that in Montreal. And another Canadian that has a starting spot potentially. Yeah,
I think that he's, he's a CFL player, and you are going to need CFL players. I mean, I don't think they want to bottom out. I don't think they want a red-black scenario. Even though I do think this year will be mainly about talent evaluation and program redirection, less about wins. But I think you need to have, you have to have guys like him, professionals who could come in, do the job, are efficient and smart on the field, and you want to maintain a kind of baseline of respectability. I don't think you want to bottom out, even in a rebuild. It's you look at teams don't recover well from bottoming out. You have to have sort of a base of decent talent to try and turn it around.
I'm more optimistic than you. I think this is actually going to be a good season after a slow start. I do think, it's so early. It's hard for me to say this, but
feels like maybe a wager.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to come up with something closer to. I want to see camp, and then we can talk about it. But I think it wouldn't be surprising if we started 2-4, and then started pulling it together. There's talent here. I'm telling you, there's good talent.
Pulling it together. Are you suggesting the Ottawa portion of the schedule in Montreal?
Maybe. Well, that's the other thing too, though. The East doesn't look great. Like Hamilton lost a lot of pieces. I could see Hamilton. I don't think they're going to get. I don't think they're going to have more than 10 wins. And Ottawa still looks a lot like Ottawa. They've added a little bit. And Montreal, who knows what they are? They were two different teams last year.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about Montreal either. I think that
so that doesn't leave a lot. Like the East
true.
is wide open. So I could see us having a bit of a rough start. And as long as this coaching staff can maintain a positive attitude and keep guys focused, I don't think there's any reason why in the second half of the season we don't do kind of like what Montreal did last year, where they just turned it on and they were unstoppable, pretty much as a Labor Day and beyond, where, they just didn't lose. And, hopefully that's what happens to the Argos. And I can totally see it. It's a talented team. I think the most interesting thing to me is how many different guys there are to be excited about. Like, regardless of the level of talent we're talking about, whether it's, one of the bigger names that we've already mentioned or one of the Canadians that we've brought in. I thought something that was interesting. I was listening to the Argos Fancast podcast. If you don't listen to that podcast as an Argos fan, I'd suggest you do. It's highly entertaining. And those guys definitely know what they're talking about in terms of Argos and CFL. But they were going around the room a little bit talking about who they were most excited about. And Will, who I respect a lot, mentioned Nick Shorthill, which, again, to me, I think is amazing because, he's right. Like, that is a guy to be excited about. And in my head, I probably have him penciled in as like the third or fourth string Mac in terms of like all the guys that we've brought in. And yet he's right in that that's a guy that has filled in admirably and has looked great in moments. And, who knows? He could step up. And so if you've got guys that you're sort of penciling in as fourth string guys that have the potential to play and have played and have been successful in this league, then, it means you've brought in some really good pieces. So, I think top to bottom, whether it's, the receivers, the DBs, the linebackers, the O-linemen, top to bottom, I thought the Argos did a terrific job. And I'm ready to go.
You're a little more excited than I am.
Well, I am. Like,
I think, it is, as I've said, it's not Madden. I think that when you put guys on the field who have never played together and have never run a playbook together, that's hard. It's difficult. You can't just sort of roll in 8 new guys on both sides of the ball and pick up and go. I think. I agree. I think, to my mind, I think what they were looking to do is, put a huge bucket into the river and sift through it. And if you find a couple nuggets, perfect. And then you start building towards year 2 with a core of decent players that you've gotten for a great price because they weren't, the expensive free agents. So I'm fully on board with that. I think that what will really be a test for the coaching staff is camp, because you now have a lot of talent, and how effective are they at having camp be a pure meritocracy, about not worrying about what guys sign for and picking the best 45 guys to break camp with. I think that's going to be
it's going to be tough.
It's going to be a real test. It's going to be a real test of
the good thing is
their
though
evaluation.
Is that it's a new staff. Like, I think it would have been more difficult, to think about guys like Chandler Worthy, who they re-signed, who looked good in relief in the fall. A guy like that, the old coaching staff might have felt like, well, he's our X until someone replaces him. And I think the staff probably just comes in fresh and has nobody really penciled in anywhere. And they'll wait to see who impresses them. I hope, at least that's what I hope happens. I hope it is a fair competition.
Yeah, I'm on board with this step. Again, I'm cautiously optimistic. I feel like this is exactly what I wanted them to do in free agency. And now we'll see what they do in the international draft, where I hope they're going to show some advanced sort of analytical analysis and who they use there, and try and take advantage of the international draft.
Well, I don't think we have any global players under contract right now.
No. Maybe they're just punting on it. Maybe they can't find the edge they want in that field.
Yeah, no, it could be. I think I've watched a lot of film on these guys, and if you haven't had a chance to yet, go to xsandargos.com. I've got a piece that I put out on all of our new signings, with the exception of the guys they've signed in the last 3 days. I haven't had a chance to go through their stuff yet, but it's just my notes of, things I thought about them. And again, like I've said many times, I was blown away. Every new guy I looked at, and especially some of the guys I'd never heard of before. Prince Inabu, for example, from Pace University. He's a guy that, probably ends up on the practice squad if we're lucky, because there's going to be a bunch of guys we want on the practice squad. But just in terms of talent, he's unbelievable. The stuff he can do. The problem is he's only played his position for a year. And, you can't just suddenly jump in to professional football when you've only had 1 year experience at that position. And, so that's a guy I hope we can keep around, because I guarantee he'll turn into something if we do. And then another guy like Quidarius Smith from Akron, who's, probably just a bit too slight to make the NFL and from a small school. But you watch his film and he looks a lot like Brendan Banks. And, that's a piece, we'd like to have.
Yeah, I'm quite excited about him, actually.
And, he's, who knows what's going to happen to him, though? Like, who knows what he'll look like in this setup? Because, again, you watch him playing at Akron and it's hard to gauge. They had trouble getting him the ball. He was basically running 3 routes. He ran a deep route at a hitch, and they had him involved in a dagger concept coming across the middle. But you didn't really get to see him do that much, and it really not against great competition. So, yeah, he's got great speed. He could be really exciting. And he's like 25 pounds heavier than Banks, but he's got that same, those same assets. So yeah, he could be great. I don't know why no one took a sniff at him in the NFL.
Size.
You think that's it? It's just he's too small.
Yeah, if you look at the number of
like Banks, but Banks was in the NFL briefly. Like he was with.
I don't think there's necessarily a rhyme or reason to it. I mean, if you look at the number of undrafted guys that make impacts in the NFL playoffs, in the Super Bowl, you can't be like, well, that was the only good undrafted guy. It probably means there were 100 guys who could have done what he did, and that guy just caught the break. He caught the eye of a coach. He had somebody pound the table for him. I really just think for so many of those guys, it's completely the breaks, depending on the situation. If you get buried on the depth chart, if you have a coach who doesn't care what undrafted guys do, I think any number of things can result in. Look at Cam Wake. I mean, there's lots and lots of talent that escapes the NFL. So I'm not worried about the NFL missing.
No, and it's our advantage. But yeah, I'm really excited to see him in camp. He is fast, like serious fast. What do you think happened with TJ Jones? That was kind of a weird one.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been nice, obviously, in terms of.
I'm not 100% that's not
adding another Canadian.
Like I'm not ready to say it's not happening now. Like it's not like he's signed anywhere else for the time being. But it was weird. We got this report, midday that the Argos were bringing in Daniels and TJ Jones, and I think the number was $200,000 each. I think that was what Dave Naylor was saying. And Dave Naylor doesn't miss. His leads are good. He's got really good sources, and then 3 Down was reporting that as well.
Except for afternoon drive time.
Yeah. And it got me really excited because, again, that's another Canadian receiver. Like, think about that Canadian receiving core, but it just didn't pan out. And maybe it was a case of they'd put an offer on the table to both Jones and Daniels, and Daniels came back first, and they maybe had to pull their offer with Jones, or maybe there was a detail in the contract that they couldn't settle on, and his agent just decided, no, we don't want to do it.
Yeah, it feels like there was one contract to be had, and he didn't get it. Maybe they just thought, wait a minute, how many Canadian receivers do we want? And maybe
Well, I think more is probably how many $200,000 receivers do we want, which is a fair question.
Yeah, I can't imagine that there were two $200,000 contracts available. That makes no sense. Why wouldn't you just bring back Walker?
At that point, I get that, unless again you're looking for that overhaul. But now there's no cap in the off season, and that's where this is going to get interesting too. As soon as as soon as there's a cap, there are going to be some issues because the Argos are definitely way over it, but they're going to have to figure out pretty quickly who they want to keep and who they can afford to let go. I think there's some trading pieces that they've got as well, and that might be interesting, as the offseason progresses, because they're definitely heavy at certain positions. You want to talk a little bit about the positional groups, like
sure.
Where we think there's still room for help?
Well, I mean, I think from our earlier podcast when we were speaking before, I think that they have done a nice job of restocking, recuperating the offensive line position.
Yeah, it's no longer dire, but there's still some questions. Like I'm still not sure who's going to play center. Like I kind of wonder. I wonder if they're going to try Eric Starzala at center. He played center at Guelph in 2016. I know that's a little while ago. He spent the last couple seasons playing tackle, but he has a full year of center, and it'd be nice to put him there as opposed to being lost in the depth of tackle and have another Canadian start at center. McEwen moving on opens up that spot, and there's no reason to think he can't do it. Like McEwen came in as a rookie, started all 18 games in his rookie season. Now, he had played years of center at Calgary, so that is a little different. But again, Starzala he looks the part. He's really good. He's a very good tackle. Looked a little new to center when he played it in 16, but with a full training camp with really good coaching, I think that would be ideal, because that lets you play Bladek at guard, and then you've got Blake at the other guard spot, and then suddenly I think our line looks potentially really good.
Yeah, I think that's a nice job by the team to at least get it back to a place where maybe they're only one guy away from it being solid, which is not how it looked.
And I wouldn't mind them. Yeah, if they could bring in a center who can even serve in a backup role, someone that's got experience actually playing center in the CFL. I think that'd be ideal. But again, there aren't a lot of those names. So and Bladek has played center. He limited, when he was the sixth lineman in Saskatchewan, he learned the part. He felt comfortable with it, but he's not a natural center, and it'd be a shame to lose him at guard.
Maybe they hit the jackpot and they score themselves something in the draft.
Yeah, and that's possible too. And maybe they have their eye on someone for that. And I don't know.
You go get a center and you're golden for a couple of years. I think that defensively they're in a much better position than offensively. I think defensively it's easier to plug and play guys, generally speaking. I
feel really good. They've got a billion good defensive backs and cover linebackers. And their D line looks. I don't even know. Like I was trying to put together like a depth chart, and who would I have starting out of this group right now. The D line is sick. They're really good.
I'm really happy defensively. I think that the potential is there for it to be really fast, really aggressive, really physical defense, which I think is what you would ideally have. Even if not, as the offense is trying to gel, and defense always gels faster than offense. I think that's a smart play by them to focus on the defense and to not have both sides of the ball be at the same stage of rebuilding.
There's got to be some movement. I don't know if they're going to trade one of these guys, but they've basically got, just look at this now, they've got 8 guys that could start on the defensive line, between Jocelyn Thomas, who we just resigned. You got Bazzi, Davis, Nevis, Foot. We'll see what Ollie is. Rowe coming in from Winnipeg looks amazing. O'Kine, if he's still got some gas in the tank, that could be awesome. I'm a little worried about linebacker.
Yeah, I was gonna say we didn't get.
There's no big name, right? There's 8 guys that could. We're really talking about 2 linebacker spots, because again, I think we're fine at cover backer, but in terms of a Mac, I don't know. I don't know who that is. Knox Jr. Woods, Bear Woods. I'd like a better answer there.
It's they weren't a very good team last year, so you don't go from being not a very good team to suddenly a really good team. You're going to have holes.
Well, that's a hole.
Yeah, that's a hole.
There's a hole at backer. But yeah, I wonder how close they were to getting Larry Dean. Hamilton ended up coming away with him. Man, that would have been a nice piece. But that might.
He was coming from Edmonton, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was coming from Edmonton, and that would have been a nice piece to get for this defense. But that might have meant that we didn't sign Daniels.
It makes sense for him too. I mean, Hamilton obviously is already at a stage where he can come in and be effective, where as opposed to rebuilding. So
you know what you're looking at.
Sense.
Yeah, you know what you're looking at in Hamilton. I don't think they're going to have a great season. I think they're fine, but I think they're favorites probably to win the East, and it makes sense for him. And he knows Hamilton. He's played there.
If there, I know we disagree on this. If there were one area I'm concerned about, it's running back.
We couldn't be more opposed on this. I think running back is stacked, and you think we've got nobody.
I think it's stacked in the old CFL time machine. In 2015, I think that we would be rolling.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. Like they're not 22-year-old guys.
I think,
but they're not 35
I'll take
either.
two words that never go together successfully: old and running back.
They're not old. They're like 26 and 27. That's fine.
Well, they have highway miles.
Some like Williams hasn't played in a couple of years. Sankey, I don't think has played in like 7 years.
those are not pros.
They're rested.
Rested. So am I. I'm rested.
Yeah.
I haven't played in 20 years.
Well, we got a spot at linebacker.
Yeah. So I understand your endless optimism here. I don't.
You just need one of them to hit. You don't need 4 running backs. Like
I think
if
no,
I think Williams is the guy.
It's
but
no
I
for
think
me, dog.
If Williams doesn't hit and Sankey doesn't hit, I still think you're okay. It's still looking between Gray, who I really like. I think Gray probably ends up being. I wonder if Gray ends up playing fullback for this team. And then what happens to like Cross and Sibasu in that case, because he is really a fullback more than he is an every down back. But that would be interesting. But we also brought in Thigpen, and we saw Willett last year in limited action. So like even if Williams and Sankey are a 0,
I mean, do you think anybody on that is better than Wilder? If they had re-signed Wilder, would he not be RB1?
I don't know. Like I get, because I don't know what these guys look like. Like certainly not in all 3 of their primes. I think Williams is better, but it's not like Wilder's not 24 either. And I like Wilder a lot, and I was really upset when he left. But
they clearly have a type. For whatever reason, they have felt that there's lots of thunder in the backfield.
It's exciting.
Not as much lightning. They have definitely...
No, Sankey's not. Sankey's more lightning than thunder.
Maybe. We haven't seen him in a
while.
while.
I know. Who knows what he is now. But we'll see again, and we'll have a pretty good picture. Like when camp opens, if Sankey comes in at like 280 pounds, then they would cross him off, I guess.
Do you have a list of NFL washouts who came up to the CFL and turned
weren't
it
good,
around?
or were good?
Yeah.
Well, there aren't that many. Well, it's the problem with... This is always the danger when you sign guys that have had some time in the NFL, is that they don't take this CFL job as seriously as they took their NFL job. And you have to hope that between these running backs, there's one of them that is going to give absolutely everything to be the best CFL player he can be.
Yeah, because I think it's important, even fans to realize that it isn't that the CFL players are not as good as the NFL players. It's just a different league. That the level of elite athleticism, I would argue, is the same. It's just different skill sets, different sizes, different weights, because NFL guys come up, and if you wash out of the NFL, it's because you're not a good enough football player, and like the football is not poor in the CFL. It is just played at a different speed and size. It's hard to find something analogous to it, but you see it, guys do not wash out of the NFL and come up here and dominate. I mean, look at, I think a classic, look at Ricky Williams.
Yeah, I know. And a guy that was at the top of his game pretty much, who came up here and he was fine.
Fine.
But yeah, everyone came up, all the Americans thought he was going to come up here and just make the league look foolish. Now he had a bit of a target on his back, but yeah, he came up here and he was all right. But,
yeah, I mean, we'll see. I don't, again, I get it. You're going to have holes. I don't think
there's that many. I think we have a question mark at center, and I think we have 2 question marks at linebacker. I think that's it. I think there's talent here to go around.
I don't think there's 500 yards in this backfield with one guy. I don't think any of those guys in that backfield have 500 yards in them.
I don't even know. I don't even know what to say. Like I can't even.
Well, again, we'll feel like a number of wagers are going to happen.
We will have to have a wager podcast.
Once camp opens.
I don't remember you ever beating me in any wager, so I feel like you're.
Well, I beat you when you took Bishop Sankey in your fantasy draft 6 years ago. I believe we had a wager on that.
We may have.
Yeah.
Second time's a charm.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that'll just about do it for us today. But yeah, a lot of things to talk about, and we'll be back next week with a little bit more analysis, maybe position by position. And I look to put out a depth chart later on in the week, and maybe we can talk about some of the guys that we see leading as we go into camp, guys that we're projecting. As they start having to think about cutting this roster down at some point. It's just absolutely massive right now.
Yeah, I think we can put together some stuff about who to look for in camp, who might spark. Like, is there somebody you think might really surprise in camp?
I don't even. There's so many guys that I just kind of want to get my own eyes on them. But like I was saying before, like I'm really interested in Anabu. I'm really interested in Smith. There's a couple of these DBs that I just didn't really get a good look. I think Singler is a guy that could really surprise us. He did really well in Arizona. He actually made it to sort of the last cut down day, and you look at his film and he looks fantastic.
Well, here, I'll make a prediction right now. Defense is going to dominate at camp. They are going to.
There may be some short whistles.
They are going to push the offense around.
Yeah, I don't think there's much question about
that. That's a tough break for the offensive guys at camp because.
Well, I think just the line alone, like they may have to go no contact on the line for just to get Nichols into some sort of. He's going to be doing a lot of skelly, just to get familiar with these receivers because he's not going to have any time with this between the inexperience of our O-line and the strength of the D-line. Man, there's stuff to be excited about for one of us, apparently.
Well, I'm excited.
Well, that'll do it for us today. For JB, I'm Ben Grant. Thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and tell all your friends about us. And don't forget to go to xsandargos.com and check out the pieces that we brought out last week and some of the stuff that we'll be putting out later on this week. Take care. I'll see you next time.